The strong US dollar is killing the US dollar. Now, that may sound a little off to you, but if you look at what's happening around the world right now and the inflation story and everything going on with the exchange rates, it starts to make sense. What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and even though yesterday we got a 9.1% CPI print, some of the highest inflation we've had in almost 40 years, believe it or not, the dollar is getting stronger. Now, I'm talking about the dollar against other currencies, not against stuff. And that is wreaking havoc around the world. It's causing riots, it's causing civil unrest. It's even brought about the collapse of the Sri Lankan government. And you're going to see this is only expediting the death of the US dollar. Now, to understand that, you have to go all the way back to 1971 and the PetroDollar. See, the PetroDollar started in 1971 with an agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia, where in exchange for military aid from the U.S., Saudi Arabia would ensure all global oil trade happened in U.S. dollars. That has given the U.S. incredible economic power over the last 50 years. And I'll give you an example of why. Let's say you are the kind and benevolent yet ruggedly handsome ruler of the People's Republic of Jakistan. Like every country in the world, your country needs oil. But Saudi Arabia has ensured that all oil has to be bought in dollars. So before the ruler of Jakistan can go and buy his oil, first he needs to trade his melon bucks for US dollars, then he can buy the oil. That has the effect of lowering the value of the melon buck and increasing the value of the US dollar. It also forces Jakistan to keep a reserve of US dollars. Now fast forward to 2008 and the global financial crisis. We have a real estate collapse here in the United States, and the Federal Reserve comes to the rescue, right? It was the Federal Reserve that bailed out the banks. Or was it the taxpayers that bailed out the banks? Wrong. It was the rest of the world that bailed out America's banks during the GFC, and I'll explain why. You see, when the Federal Reserve printed all those dollars for the bailouts, they didn't actually create any value. They just stole value from existing dollars. And that was not limited to just dollars here in the United States. That value was stolen from all the dollars everywhere else in the world, including those dollars that are held in the People's Republic of Jakistan. So it was the rest of the world that bailed out the banks during the GFC, not the Federal Reserve, not the taxpayers. It was the whole world. Fast forward again to 2020, and now we have the pandemic, and the Federal Reserve goes on another printing spree, and they print trillions upon trillions of dollars for years. Again, all of that value wasn't just stolen from our savings here in the States. That value was stolen from everybody's savings around the world. You think that might create a little bit of animosity towards the United States? You better believe it. Now, on top of that, that money printing at the Federal Reserve caused runaway inflation here in the States. And then the Russian invasion of Ukraine made that inflation even worse as commodities across the board started to rally. But remember, most of these commodities are traded in US dollars because of that petrodollar agreement with Saudi Arabia. Well, if you need more dollars to buy that oil now, where are you going to get those dollars? You have to spend more of your Jakistani melon bucks to buy those dollars. Where are you going to get those? The central bank is just going to have to print them. And increasingly around the world, central banks are resorting to the printing presses in order to buy those more dollars that they need in order to buy the oil, which is exclusively traded in US dollars. This is what people mean when they say the chief export of the United States for the last 50 years has been dollars or has been inflation, because that's exactly what it's been. We've taken the inflation and the money printing here, and we have just spread it all over the world, stealing value from everybody. Well, now that bird is coming home to roost, because as the rest of the world is printing more and more of their own currency to try to keep up with the price of inflation in US dollar denominated oil, that's causing their currencies to depreciate even faster than the dollar. Now the exchange rate is making that problem even worse for these other countries, and that is why the Dixie keeps going up, or the dollar index. This is the strength of the US dollar measured against other global currencies. So as the rest of the world debases their currency to buy more dollars, that's driving up the value of the dollar. It's also causing a flight to safety as all of these other currencies around the world are going down in value. Investors are dumping those currencies and they're hiding in dollars, something called the dollar milkshake theory that Brent Johnson came up with. This is causing incredible pain worldwide. There is civil unrest popping up all over the world right now. I'll put a link in the description down below to this video that Joe Brown just did about how there are riots and protests springing up everywhere right now. It all comes down to central banks and inflation, and all of that starts with the US dollar. And that's where the BRICS countries come in. BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's an economic alliance founded for the unofficial purpose of challenging U.S. dominance in global trade. The rest of the world is sick of having their value inflated away by the United States. And can you blame them? I don't like it when my dollars get devalued by the central bank. I can imagine how somebody in China or Russia or India feels. And with that, we are going to shrink my big melon of a head and check out some of these articles. You see, BRICS is no longer just Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Here we have Iran and Argentina officially applying to join the BRICS alliance. This is published June 27th of this year. You can add 2 more countries to that BRICS list. Now, I just want to add that BRICS is an economic alliance. This is not a military alliance. A lot of these countries actually have a lot of military animosity towards each other. China and India, for example, trade shots across their border all the time. This is an economic alliance only. And it's not just Iran and Argentina. Check out this story just breaking today, and this should be the biggest story in the world right now. It's not. BRICS expects Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey to join the group soon. Now, Egypt, that's a big oil country. Turkey, that's a NATO ally. But Saudi Arabia, that's the big one. Saudi Arabia, the country that helped bring about the petrodollar, is joining an alliance that is created for the sole purpose of breaking the petrodollar. This is a huge story. The largest oil exporter in the world is about to join an economic alliance for the purpose of breaking U.S. dominance of global trade. This has been caused by our reckless fiscal policy in Congress and our reckless monetary policy at the Federal Reserve that has flooded the system with easy dollars, creating inflation that's been painful for the middle class here in the States, but it has been much more painful for everybody else in the world. And now that bird is coming home to roost. And that bird is going to make a freaking mess. Now, to understand how that works, I want to use an example of an amusement park. A lot of you guys may have been to an amusement park where before you can get on the rides, you have to buy tokens, right? This own little currency that's used only at the amusement parks. And say these tokens that get you onto the rides, they get you into the amusement parks all over the country. And if you've ever been to one of these parks, it probably goes something like this. You buy a whole bunch of the tokens at the beginning of the day, more than you need. Kids start driving you nuts. You've had enough, and you leave before you've spent all those tokens. It's actually a really good business model because it forces people to hold your fake currency. Well, imagine that this token is used at every amusement park around the country, but all of a sudden, this one amusement park in this rich neighborhood starts abusing the system, and it's ripping off all the other parks. And then one by one, all these other amusement parks stop accepting these tokens. Now, everybody around the world is holding these amusement park tokens that are now worthless in their hometown. So what do? They're probably going to sell their unused tokens to people who live near this other amusement park because that's the only place those tokens have any use. And the price is going to go down as more people are increasingly dumping those increasingly worthless tokens. The next thing you know, all the locals around that one amusement park are sitting on huge stacks of these tokens, and they're all going to the amusement park at the same time to redeem them. Now the lines are getting ridiculously long at this place, and because the lines are so long, there's technically a shortage of rides, and so the people who run the park start raising the token price to get onto those rides. That's inflation caused by all those tokens coming home. But because there's millions and millions of these tokens coming home, they're not just raising the price a little bit, the price is going up dramatically. That is inflation coming home to roost. And that is exactly what is going to happen to U.S. dollars when they all start coming home. See, now that Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Iran, Argentina, Egypt, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia are not going to be trading oil in U.S. dollars, well, they don't need to hold as many U.S. dollars, do they? So what are they going to do? They're probably going to sell those dollars. And who's going to buy those dollars? Probably not anybody in those countries. Those dollars are going to be sold back to the states. That money is going to flow to where it has utility. It's going to leave the places where it's worthless, just like those amusement park tokens left the towns that no longer accept them, and they're all going to go to that one park where they're still used. And that creates runaway inflation here in the United States when all of those dollars that we've exported for 50 years around the world through our reckless behavior, when they all start coming home and they all start chasing the same number of goods and services here in the States, it's going to cause runaway inflation. And it's going to be economic mayhem for folks here in the States. And this increasingly strong dollar, this rise in the Dixie, it's only accelerating the de-dollarization around the world. It's driving more countries into this BRICS alliance. And once in that alliance, those countries no longer need the dollars. And so they're going to start sending them back here to the States. It's going to be a slow process. It's not going to happen overnight, but the pace of this is going to increase as time goes on. And we have no one to blame but ourselves. Again, this has been caused by decades of reckless borrowing, reckless spending, reckless money printing by the people in power here in the States. Till next time, live small and dream big.